Hi, welcome to Crone Convos. I'm Kyria Carpenter, and I am joined today by Jude Meyer-Thomas, the co-founder of the Eden Alternative, among other amazing things, and Jenna Dion, dementia doula. And today we're going to talk about age segregation. To get us started, what is age segregation? It's exactly what it sounds like when we take people and based upon their age, put them in different places. When I think about age segregation, I think about the fact that now it increasingly, and we have Bella, I should have introduced Bella.
Bella.
When we're small children, we get placed in classes in school based on our age. We stay with our age cohort pretty much throughout our school life. Then even in the workplace, you're usually with people around your same age because of place you are in work. And then as we get into elderhood, then we have lots of places to put people based on their age, 55 plus communities. And then we eventually segregate based on cognitive ability as well. And so what we want to talk about today is why age segregation isn't good for us as a culture and as individuals. Why do we think, why isn't it good for us?
Well, I think there's a million reasons why it isn't good for us. I think we learn from each other, all variety of people and ages. But I did want to, as you brought that up, was thinking about in the Eden Alternative. We frequently say that education is the antidote to fear, which is true. But I think I'd have to add to that, education and experience is the antidote to fear. If we don't expose people to differences, and I'm talking people living with dementia, people with differing abilities, we can talk about it all we want, but if we don't live it and experience it, how do we ever get to the point where we truly get over our preconceived ideas and our fear of things? I used to work in special education, and I used to think the idea of inclusion was awesome. But what happened was we put all these children together in a classroom, and they got to experience what normal life was like. But then when it came time for the outside activities, the birthday parties, where everybody else in the classroom was getting an invitation and the children with the differences were not, I found that almost harder for them, because they had already seen what it supposedly could be like. So we have to get past that fear. And I think the only way to do that is to actually live it and experience it, and actually start including people living in communities with a variety of differences, ages, abilities of all types.
Yeah, because when you put someone away or in a different place, and you're kind of like, well, why are they put away? And then there's almost like this fear that comes up because you're not sure how to work with those people, or why are they over there, or so it's this othering that's like, I'm normal and those people are not. So and to your point where education is great, when kids learn about aging and dementia, that's good, but that doesn't make me want to go and work with that, So for me, when I was 17, I was a dietary aide, and I got to be in relationship with people. It was kind of frowned upon. I'd get over the intercom, Jenna, report to the kitchen, because I'd be talking with all the elders. But that relationship made me want to do what I do for work now. And that's where the exposure comes in. So because, we're social beings, we want to live in community. And if we're othering people, it doesn't allow the authenticity between all of us to say, we're equal.
Yeah.
You may have differing abilities. You may have a different skin color. You may have a different age. But what can I learn from you? What can you learn from me? And how can we be in relationship together?
Yeah, I feel like what you guys are saying, two things come up for me. One, around the idea of education and how important it is, but I feel like so often with age, so much of the education that's out there is based on decline and
Yes.
based on the tragedy narrative. And so education is important, but without that lived experience with someone of a different age than you, it just sounds like it's terrible. I know the way Ashton Applewhite puts it. She says like the bowl looks different, when you're in the ring than when you're.
Sure.
And so I think it's helpful when you're just looking at it from the stands and looking at aging. It's easy to only see decline.
Sure.
But when you're interfacing, as we all have, right, with elders and having those, personal connections, then you get to see what else is there. And I think the Eden Alternative does a great job of educating on the what else is there and balancing that.
It's educating, but I have to say it's a huge societal issue because anytime we ever look at any kind of scenario where it's us and them.
Yep.
So that's as generic as in the workplace, the employees and the workers. I mean, the employer and the employee. It automatically states an us and them. There's already a hierarchy place. So it's not just with elders. It's not just people with differing abilities or different sexual orientation. It's we set that up in almost every part of our lives. And I have this very Pollyanna dream that someday we totally get rid of that us and them, that we don't ever use the word they referring to a group of people with different color skin or a different religion or a different age or a different ability. And, perhaps that is gigantic and maybe not even logical to think it could happen, but I think it's that big. I think, we're talking about aging, which is awesome. We need to figure out how to take care of that segregation, but it's huge. It's a huge societal thing that we create an us and them segregation in almost every facet of our life. Truly.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love what you just said, and I feel like there's a really actionable, easy thing to do in what you just said, which is noticing when we use the word they, not to refer to an actual person, but to an imagined other
group. Yes.
Yeah, when we're referring to like a whole group and an imagined other. And I feel like that's a pretty easy thing to do, maybe wear like a bracelet or something to remind you to like notice when you say they, and then think about who do you actually mean?
Yes, or us.
Or us, yeah.
Which, so education and, bringing people together, but what we're talking about is awareness too.
Yep.
Awareness of our stereotypes and awareness of like, when I see someone that's different than me, how does my body react? Or what's the narrative in my head saying about those people?
Yes.
So it really does come to this mindfulness and awareness of how I'm responding.
Yes.
And if it makes me uncomfortable, why does it make me uncomfortable?
That's where the change begins within each one of us. And that change happens with that awareness of us, at least even acknowledging that we have those biases.
Yeah.
Even those of us with the best intentions can find that bias.
Yeah. And awareness is something you don't need any extra like money or time or resources to do, which is, I'm always a big fan of things that like right now, today, we can start noticing when we say them or we and what we mean about what we, what I mean when I say.
Yes. And I think it's important as we discuss this to never make other people, as we're having these conversations, feel ashamed or that we're scolding or telling people they are wrong. So much of what happens in this field is, and I don't really care for this word, but it's true. It's ignorance. It's lack of experience, lack of knowledge and skill about it. So all we're saying is, how do we create a society that is more inclusive, where no one has to feel that you are wrong. There's the us and them, and we are right. I think we are, the three of us sitting here and many other people joining us on this journey are trying to have that awareness. And all's we, again, I don't know how to get away from it. It's very
using I statements almost like, like, or something.
Yes.
Yeah. Because nobody does this maliciously. Nobody's like,
no.
Let me write a tragedy narrative, or let me, put them over here. It's not like you're doing it to be mean, or it's just how our culture has created these dynamics.
Yeah, and even our culture didn't do it. We were talking about that before we started chatting, that our culture didn't say, oh, let's age segregate people. That makes sense. It was convenient when, child labor laws came into being. Suddenly children, and, we shifted from agricultural to industrial. Children didn't go with parents to work. So we need a place for them to go. So we create school. And it makes sense in school to group people by age because it's easy. It's really stinking easy to group people by age. It's much easier than assessing academic ability and what they're interested in and making affinity groups based on that. And so you can see how it happened. And then when people are at work all day, then we have like nuclear families living together. So we're not living intergenerationally. Well, now we need a place for older people to live. And so, I think it happened honestly. But now we're seeing that it's really reinforcing ageism in our culture. And
it happened honestly, but you also have to say, but where were our priorities?
Right.
So when you think about the fact that, yes, it happened honestly that we decided to institutionalize our elders because we felt that it was much more financially viable to put masses of people in one building and to live and die among strangers. But so you're right. So financially, that made more sense. There was a reason behind making that decision, but where was our priority? It certainly was not with the human being. It was not with the elders that were going to be placed in that. It was with the financial institution. How can we make this more financially viable? So we make these decisions for a reason. I agree. Most people don't say, how can I just be mean and terrible and awful and create a terrible place? It's for reasons. I just think we forget that the person should always be at the center of all of those decisions.
Absolutely.
And we forget to do that.
I think
and
that is a good point. Yeah.
And
we didn't make it wanting to make the world ageist and wanting to hurt people, but we didn't think about how our actions would affect humans. We thought about how they would affect
The
finances.
bottom line.
Yeah.
Because like pushing people away, rather than being like, what do you want? Asking them, what do you want? How do you want this to look? And including people.
Yeah.
And being like, because we made decisions for other people without asking them.
Right. Yeah. One thing I wanted to go back onto and just get your thoughts on this was, Jude, the story that you mentioned about a child being in a classroom, and mixing children of different abilities in the classroom. It sounds like in that story, part of what went wrong is the child who was brought into the classroom was given this experience of like, oh, look what normal. There's still this sense of us and them of like, oh, come be in this normal classroom, as opposed to how do we create a classroom that is inclusive for people of all abilities. And I know it sounds like what it brought up for me was the concept of tokenism. And I think in our world too, like, oh, let's make sure. I mean, best, I feel like sometimes almost the best case scenario is that like, if someone even thinks to make something age inclusive, it can end up being tokenism of like, oh, let's get one older person. So I guess just wanted to discuss that too in desegregating. How do we avoid tokenism?
Well, I think that was both sides. So yes, it was to, enable them to experience the quote unquote normal. But also on the flip side was the children who were living those quote normal lives to be exposed to something different or to experience something different. But we don't do a good job, and I don't believe, this is my humble opinion, that we don't do a good job in really helping them to see the abilities of all people. So frequently you'll find the quote unquote normal or abled children always wanting to help and assist the others. Well, we all need a hand at times, of course, but we don't help them to see the abilities and the strengths of all people. So I think that tokenism is on both sides of the coin. Does it occur, or do we help it to occur to the children to understand that to be invited to that party or to be invited out on some kind of gathering outside of the school is just as important to that sense of inclusion as our tokenism within the classroom. So I think we can do the same thing, we hear over and over again the not in my backyard idea. People don't want the house for people with special needs or people living with dementia, people with mental illness, not in my backyard. Yeah, it's great. Do what you can to make them happier, but it's the fear. I think it's the fear. And it's such a cyclical problem. We've got to figure out how to let people experience that, not just talk about it.
Yeah.
It's the show, don't tell.
Because
We got to do it. We just have to do it. And we have to start integrating on a regular basis, not just the token.
Yeah.
And so in my previous employment at assisted living, there was the traditional assisted living, and then there was the memory care unit, and they had some fancy like garden place, and then it was first floor, and and then the basement, or things that people had this fear. I don't want to go there. I don't want to do that. And as soon as somebody would wander or maybe be sleeping a little bit longer than usual, it would be like, oh, I think it's ready for them to go down to the memory care, right?
Yeah.
And in my experience, there's been a couple of different things. There's an adjustment period of like, where am I? And then, the lies, well, the carpets in your room were, ruined, kind of thing. And then, so that's sad in itself. But then there'd be an adjustment. But then when it was, in this community where everyone had similar, cognition, I did see that that person would maybe talk more or, join in the activities more. Because I don't know if it was, they felt like they needed to like, keep up at a certain level when there was different cognition levels. But so to play devil's advocate a little bit is that I saw people really blossom when they were with other people with similar abilities.
Sure. We tend to rise to the occasion. All of us do, It goes back to the old thing where your parents would tell you to dress up if you were going to a certain occasion. And many of us hated having to do that. But you did find that your behavior tends to change to some degree when you are in an environment that has different expectations. And so there's blessings and curses that go along with that. And that's one of the blessings, I think.
Yeah.
There's a downside side to that as well.
Yeah, because I want inclusion, but I want also, maybe I'm Pollyanna about inclusion, but I want people to feel comfortable in that environment. And I think that goes back to facing our fears and being together. And
Right. Well, I think the answer isn't saying like, okay, let's then segregate based on memory care, but looking at what is it in this like memory care unit that made people feel as though they could express themselves, that they could be part of the community, and how were they feeling othered in the, assisted living part, for normal people. And I think it's clearly that wasn't a dementia inclusive environment. And I think, the answer is, but I feel like that's one of the ways we end up segregating, right? It's like, oh, well, look at how much better it is. But the real question is, how do we focus, to your point, on the abilities of the person, what gifts this person can bring to the community, and how do we help educate and give experiences to the rest of the members of the community to see the value of this person and what they can bring and add.
You live it.
You live it.
We got to live it. Let's make it happen.
All right.
We'll make it so.